The Lexus RZ450e with direct 4 all-wheel drive. That's right, this is a brand new electric vehicle from Lexus. It is shared mostly with the architecture of the BZ4RX. And you'll know I was not a huge fan of that car, so it makes sense that I'm not going to love this either. But I'm going to cover what this is, why it exists in the future of Lexus and Toyota products in the shop. But first, let's take a look at the exterior. And when you look at it from the aerial view, it's not so bad, but you quickly realize this is the ubiquitous design that all EV makers are trying to do now, because people want SUVs, and what are you going to do? You're going to turn it into a giant jelly bean bread box. And they are not the most attractive, so they're trying to figure out how to make it look different by changing the front grille on this car is this giant plastic slab, taillight design, you know, multi-color fender treatments and panels and all that. Tesla Model Y kind of set the benchmark for this, and now every brand is trying to copy it. And that's essentially what this looks like to me. Overall, it's very generic SUV thing at this point. When you get to the interior space, this is the new direction for Lexus. You'll see a lot of this has to do with cleaning up the interior using neutral tones. So there's a lot of light grays, off blue color in this car, brush textures, getting rid of the shiny, high contrast material, but still using bright work like silver or this brushed plastic material in the center console. But everything feels really, really soft, super comfortable, well isolated in here. The seating comfort is really, really good. And the sound deadening in here is really great. And that's because they've used basically velour off my mom's tracksuits from the 70s all over every surface, from the doors, the seats, the back seats. It does feel really good in here. I really like that part of it. It has a very soft, calming feel to it. When you look at the center console, all the knobs, buttons, and switches are very clean and easy to use. The Toyota connected infotainment, when you get to that, is an enormous screen just for the sake of it. You have physical rotary knobs for HVAC and a couple hard buttons to turn on like defroster, and then you have a physical volume knob. But in Toyota connected, it's the same system you've seen in every Toyota product. They haven't really reskinned it for Lexus yet, other than adding a few menus for the EV part of this, which are really, really generic. The drive mode selection looks like they set it up in about 27 seconds. And things like looking at your range and all that is, you know, they haven't really customized it too much for the electric car experience yet, because I don't think they know what they're going to do long term. Same thing with the center gauge cluster. It is really, really simple, which is a blessing and a curse, because it essentially shows you nothing other than your range and your speed. And of course, you can go through there to change some things in terms of like your safety stuff, but most of that's done in the infotainment. They have moved to this capacitive style physical buttons on the steering wheel, and all of that's controlled through the HUD. And this is a great example of reinventing the wheel, much like adding a yoke option that's steer-by-wire that doesn't need to be done. By going through a sub-menu to do common controls in the HUD, I know they're trying to consolidate and simplify this and not having a cluttered wheel, but again, it's just mostly stupid. I mean, people can figure out how to have like 7 functions on a steering wheel, and now you're having the menu jump to do a lot of it. I don't know, you might get used to it, I don't know. There's some other things in here that don't make a whole lot of sense, like removing a glove box and having to move it to the center console. I get it may clear up knee space or leg room in the passenger side, but again, it reduces storage. Then back to storage, there is some positives here. The cup holder space is great, the phone storage, and of course the wireless charger is at a great angle so your phone's not going to slide out. The center armrest is the dual hinge design that we're finding on all Toyota and Lexus products. The well is very deep, so it does store a lot. And the door storage is pretty good. The back seats are very comfortable, even with the front seat all the way back, you still have room. And then the hatch space is standard SUV stuff. When you look at it overall, the load floor is about average. The hatch opens pretty quick. You can fit most of the stuff that you expect in a CUV. One of the negative things, again, about technology is you now have electronic door handles, and the outside doesn't have a physical, really, door pull. It's not mechanical, so it's got this touch on the inside part of the handle, and I found that it takes a lot of force to close these doors. If you're used to closing doors gently, like we've been taught at home not to slam doors, you have to slam these, and if you don't, you always get pissed off like I do. I always leave a back door open, and then you go outside to try to open the door, and you realize if you grab it quickly and try to slam it, it's still in a delatched state, and it just bounces back open. Keeps bouncing back open, so you can't really touch the door handle, the inside part of it. You have to use like your palm to shut the door. Just again, stupid shit about modern technology of removing mechanical systems to go to everything electromechanical for electronic control of everything. So I'm going to go into the shop and I'm going to talk about what they're doing here. what it is today and what these cars are going to be in the future, and then take it from there. Underneath the brand new Lexus RZ all-wheel drive, this is a fully electric vehicle, their first mechanical twin to the Toyota BZ4X. And if you're confused already, don't worry. Toyota as a company is so enormous, with so many different prongs and divisions and manufacturing and sub-projects. I could make a 50-episode documentary on Netflix and probably just barely scratch the surface. In fact, you could probably ask many of their employees how everything works and they'd have no idea. And that's essentially what this is. It's an electric vehicle that was just mainly created to launch their Beyond Zero program. And this year they've had a massive management and executive shakeup and have reshaped the vision of the future of what they want to do as a brand for electrification. In fact, by 2026, you're going to have a massive influx of new electric vehicles on a brand new architecture, a modular architecture where they can scale out a platform, have different front and rears, scale batteries out to make SUVs, cars, and we see this with many other brands. This is what they're doing coming soon. So what are you left with this thing? Well, not much. It's something that should literally just live in a showroom, or in terms of marketing to say, hey, look what's coming. It's not a vehicle that you want to buy and be stuck with. And I will say this, what they're trying to do is say, hey, look, this is kind of our vision. And as a customer, that's fine if you're buying a phone or some disposable consumer electronic device, but not something you want to invest over $50,000 on. This is barely a 400 volt architecture. It has a 71.6 kilowatt hour battery pack, and the range, at least on this version, depending on the tire option you choose, from 18 to 20 inch wheels. The 20 inch option barely gets 196 miles range, and if you're running the HVAC system, it drops to around 160. Now, Toyota has said that despite this lack of technology in this current generation battery pack, it's going to be stable throughout the life with minimal battery degradation. You have a cooled battery pack, you have a heated battery pack for multiple seasons. And with the dual motor design, it's going to give you all season capability. But because this is maxed out at 150 kilowatt charging speed, it's not something that is going to be DC fast charged in crazy amounts of time. The battery efficiency is nowhere near the top level EV makers at this point, and the electric motor design is on the archaic side for this first generation. I'm gonna say this, just like the BZ4RX, there are some things here to take away where you can kind of see the future of commodity EVs, and there are plenty of benefits of it here. This is not fully representing what they could do with new battery technology. Their goal is to have a vehicle with about 600 miles of range out of their commodity setups by 2030. Like 26 to 2030, that's what we're gonna see. That's not this. This is not on their new architecture. So I'm gonna drive it. I'm gonna walk you through what they're doing today so we have a basis for comparison to what they're gonna be doing tomorrow. All right, let's get this bad boy off the line, see how she goes. Sounds futuristic, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm gonna have to put this back in normal so I can make it home. So let's get right down to this, right? You're driving this as a regular car. We know that this is a very here and now generation, a beta generation of electric vehicles. It does not have the most efficient, most advanced battery pack technology. It's not using latest cutting edge, high-end electric motors front and rear. It's just supposed to give you a taste of what Lexus and Toyota can do as a brand. What I will say is that the electrification of mainstream commodity cars will have a great effect on Lexus as a luxury brand. It's gonna essentially do the same thing for every brand, but their core mission of what Lexus was trying to do as an earlier luxury brand, the refinement, the quietness, it's all here. And A lot of the driving character of this car reminds me a lot of the ES350H sedan or the ES300H sedan, the hybridized version of it. It's got the same similar great ride quality. You can tell that the damper tech in here is better than what they put on the BZ4X, or at least the valving is much more stable and smooth. It's just a really quiet, refined car. And that becomes the issue going forward, is once every single brand has access to this technology, you know, what are you going to do with it? And as it is today, they're not offering you a whole hell of a lot here other than the gimmick of, look, we have an EV. Until you can get usable range in these cars, and we know it's coming from the brand in another 3 years, this to me is just kind of like, okay, you can do it. It's smooth, it's quiet like every other EV is, but it's really not offering a whole hell of a lot more than that, other than a training exercise for their engineers to calibrate two motors, front and rear. And in terms of how it drives, it gets off the line well, it's quick, it's got a ton of usable torque. But, you know, all I'm doing is making excuses for basically saying this thing has almost no character. And it's going to change the landscape of commodity cars, normal cars, once you can get this down to a normal price point. Nobody, once you experience this with great range, good power, good efficiency, great battery efficiency, nobody's going to want to go back to this current era four-cylinder that's so overcomplicated with turbos, hybridization. You know, there's going to be a nightmare to repair. This, nobody's going to want to go back from this once we get this mainstreamed and actually something you're going to want to buy. And that's not this, but you can see it. It's there. It's in the distance. And I think once normal people get a taste of it, there's going to be an exciting future of this, assuming they can keep up with the demand. They can keep up with trying to get the materials needed to manufacture these at scale, where you're not creating a whole new supply chain issue, a whole new resource issue. We're trying to make millions of these. And where this stands is an interesting first try at electrification for the brand. I'm definitely not sold. It's not horrible. It's not great. And it's certainly not worth spending your money on, but I'm going to get into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the RZ. I said it in the shop, this is not something you want to buy. It's an interesting sneak peek at what they're trying to do in terms of styling, packaging for the future. There are some pros and cons to it. I talked about it on the interior. The drivability for a commodity vehicle, when these get down to around $30,000, there's a lot to like. It's smooth, it's quiet, and when they finally get their new architecture in place with all the software, a REAM loaded up where you could literally have this thing updated and connected to the dealer network, and the software is constantly evolving and customizable for the end user, the future of Toyota's electric cars look very, very promising, along with the fact that there's going to be some pretty large breakthroughs in battery technology that they're going to be trying to showcase in the near future. And I think once they get there, that's something we're going to look at seriously, and we're going to be very interested in doing a deep dive on some of the battery tech and, of course, the electric motors and how all the software works. But today, this is just kind of a prototype. It's a toy to say, hey, you know, get excited for the future. I wouldn't buy this. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.